Black lives have not been taken seriously as being fully human and deserving of dignity. And it should not require a maiming or torture.
Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation, but
Perhaps they've suggested,
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
hinted,
I don't know.
inferred. You don't know. Okay. In your March 24th summary, you wrote that, quote, after reviewing the special counsel's final report.
But I will say that no one.
Sir, I'm asking a question. In your March 24th summary, you wrote that, quote, after reviewing the special counsel's final report, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I have concluded that the evidence is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense. Now, the special counsel's investigation produced a great deal of evidence. I'm led to believe it included witnesses' notes and emails, witnesses' congressional testimony, witnesses' interviews, which were summarized in the FBI 302 forms, former FBI Director Comey's memos, and the president's public statements. My question is, in reaching your conclusion, did you personally review all of the underlying evidence?
No, we took and accepted.
Did
we accepted
Mr. Rosenstein?
No, we accepted the statements in the report as the factual record. We did not go underneath it to see whether or not they were accurate. We accepted it as accurate and made our.
So you accepted the report as the evidence?
Yes.
You did not question or look at the underlying evidence that supports the conclusions in the report?
No.
Did Mr. Rosenstein review the evidence that underlines and supports the conclusions in the report, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. We accepted the statements in the report,
Did
and
anyone
the
in your-
characterization of the evidence is true.
Did anyone in your executive office review the evidence supporting the report?
No.
No. Yet you represented to the American public that the evidence was not, quote, sufficient to support an obstruction of justice offense.
The evidence presented in the report. This is not a mysterious process. In the Department of Justice, we have pros memos and declination memos every day coming up. And we don't go and look at the underlying evidence.
Sir, would you support...
We take the characterization of the evidence as true.
As the Attorney General of the United States, you run the United States Department of Justice. If in any U.S. attorney's office around the country, the head of that office, when being asked to make a critical decision about, in this case, the person who holds the highest office in the land, and whether or not that person committed a crime, would you accept them recommending a charging decision to you if they had not reviewed the evidence?
Well, that's a question for Bob Mueller. He's the U.S. attorney. He's the one who presents the report.
But it was you who made the charging decision, sir.
What,
you made the decision not to charge the president.
no, in a pros memo and in a declination memo,
You said it was your baby. What did you mean by that?
it was my baby to decide whether or not to disclose it to the public.
And whose decision was it? Who had the power to make the decision about whether or not the evidence was sufficient to make a determination of whether there had been an obstruction of justice?
Prosecution memos go up to the supervisor. In this case, it was the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General who decide on the final decision. And that is based on the memo as presented by the U.S. Attorney's Office.
I think you've made it clear that you've not looked at the evidence. We can move on. I think you've made it clear, sir, that you've not looked at the evidence, and we can move on. Will you agree to consult career DOJ ethics officials about whether your recusal from the 14 investigations that have been discussed by my colleagues is necessary?
I don't see any basis for it. I already consulted with them, and
you have consulted with them about the 14 other investigations?
About the Mueller case.
Have you consulted with the career DOJ ethics officials about the appropriateness of you being involved or recusing yourself from the 14 other investigations that have been referred out?
On what basis?
Conflict of interest, clear conflict of interest.
What's my conflict of interest?
I think the American public has seen quite well that you are biased in this situation and you've not been objective, and that would arguably be the conflict of
Well,
interest.
I haven't been the only decision maker here. Now, let's take the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who was approved by this Senate 94-6 with specific discussion on the floor that he would be responsible for supervising the Russian investigation.
I'm glad you brought up that.
Okay?
That's a
And
great
he has 30
topic.
years' experience, and we had a number of senior prosecutors in the department involved in this process, both career and non-career.
Yes, I've
who
read
all
the
agreed
process,
on the
sir.
disposition.
I have another question. And I'm glad you brought that subject up because I have a question about that. Earlier today, in response to Senator Graham, you said, quote, that you consulted with Rosenstein constantly, unquote, with respect to the special counsel's investigation and report. But Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein is also a key witness in the firing of FBI Director Comey. Did you consult
Well, that's
with I'm not finished.
Yeah.
Did you consult with DOJ ethics officials before you enlisted Rod Rosenstein to participate in a charging decision for an investigation, the subject of which he is also a witness?
My understanding was that he had been cleared already to participate in it by the.
So you had consulted with them and they cleared it?
No, I think they cleared it when he took over the investigation.
Did you
That's my
consult?
understanding.
You don't know whether he's been cleared of a
he-
conflict of interest?
He would be participating if there was a conflict of interest.
So you're saying that it did not need to be reviewed by the career ethics officials in your office
believe
to
it- I
determine
believe
if
it
it was
was-
appropriate?
Well, I believe it was reviewed, and I
And what
would
was the
also point
finding?
out this seems to be a bit of a flip-flop, because when the president's
Sir,
supporters
the
were challenging
flip-flop, I think, in this
Rosenstein.
case is that you're not answering the question directly.
What?
Did the ethics officials in your office, in the Department of Justice, review the appropriateness of Rod Rosenstein being a part of making a charging decision on an investigation which he is also a witness in?
Yeah, so as I said, my understanding was he had been cleared, and he had been cleared before I arrived.
In making a decision on the Mueller report?
Yes.
And the findings of whether or not the case would be charged on obstruction of justice? He had been cleared on that?
He was the acting attorney general on the Mueller investigation.
Had he been cleared
He had been.
to make,
I am.
by your side, a
I am
decision
informed that before I arrived, he had been cleared by the ethics officials,
of what?
serving as acting attorney general on the Mueller case.
How about making a charging decision on obstruction of justice?
That is what the
underlying
acting
offenses, which include him as a witness.
You know, that's what the acting attorney general's job is.
To be a witness and to make the decision about being a prosecutor?
Well, no, but to make charging decisions.
I have nothing else. My time is right out.
Thank you.
Congressman, the U.S. intelligence community has an important role in warning our leaders about pandemics like COVID-19, because outbreaks, of course, are not just a public health matter, but also a matter of national security. Based on public statements and reporting alone, do you believe that President Trump has accurately conveyed the severity of the threat of COVID-19 to the American people?
Are you saying presently?
We are in the midst of the pandemic presently, correct?
Right. So repeat the question, because I guess I'm misunderstanding. I'm sorry. Has he accurately reflected the status of the pandemic?
Conveyed the severity of the pandemic, yes. Has he accurately conveyed the severity of COVID-19 to the American people?
I believe so.
You do. And according to April 27, 2020 Washington Post article, President Trump received upwards of a dozen briefings on COVID-19 from the U.S. intelligence agencies between January and February of this year, during which time he repeatedly denied the severity of the threat. On January 22nd, he said, quote, "We have it totally under control." On February 22nd or 26th, He insisted that the number of cases would be, quote, close to zero within a number of days. As recently as March 10th, the president stated, quote, just stay calm, it will go away. And I'm sure you're familiar with the most recent reports, including today, that we may see as many as 3,000 deaths a day in America because of COVID-19. What would you do, if confirmed, if you believed the president was not taking the warnings from the intelligence community seriously?
Senator, the intelligence that I would deliver as the Director of National Intelligence, the statements that the president said this, none of those things will influence the intelligence that I deliver to this committee and the committee in the House and members of Congress.
We are in the midst of the pandemic presently, correct?
Right.
So today we're going to create a tuna melt. What do we need? Well, we need some bread, we need mayonnaise, we need cheese, and we need good old-fashioned tuna. Open up the mayonnaise. I love mayo. I know my kids hate mayo, but make sure you get plenty on both sides. Next comes the important part, the tuna. And my personal preference is chicken with C. You gotta make sure you distribute this evenly across the bread.
I just want to show everybody how to make a tuna salad sandwich. Okay, tuna in a can. Take the top off. Drain. Drain the water. Drain the water out of it. Okay. Then drop it in.
Okay, I think we got Mark.
We have Mark. Mark, are you there?
Hey,
All right, we got it.
Hi.
we are technology superstars.
Hi. How are you?
Senator, nice to see you. It looks like a lovely kitchen.
It's a great kitchen. I saw your kitchen.
Well, you saw, like, my extra kitchen. This is like,
Oh, I only have one kitchen. Okay, are you ready, Mark? Because, brother, I love you to pieces, and we got to work this whole tuna salad thing out. So take the tuna, then get it out of the can, okay?
I'm back again. I missed the opening part. Could you show me again? You drained the tuna, and you're working on the celery now?
So you drain the tuna, so it's in the can, and then it's amazing. It'll just sit in the can while you drain the water out.
Oh, my gosh.
It does that.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, then, Mark, you see the tuna's now in the bowl. And it'll
You
come
put it in
out
a bowl?
big chunks and kind of just like smash it up a little, right? So it's
Okay.
not so chunky. All right?
All right.
Chop some celery.
Celery, okay.
Oh, here's
That's green, though, isn't
okay.
it? Isn't
That's
that healthy?
green. Yeah, I know. You could do it, though. So you go lengthwise across to the rib.
All right.
Chop it, right? You get the point, okay?
Okay.
Then put the celery in with the tuna. Okay?
Wow.
All right. A lot of people like chopped red onions. I usually put it on Doug's sandwich, but if you like red onion, this is a really quick and good way to chop an onion.
All right. Whoever is your producer needs to. I need to see that red onion.
All right. So then you crisscross the onion like this.
Wow.
Crisscross it like that.
Wow.
Okay? Look at that. You do
Holy
it like
sugar.
this, and then you just do one slice right down there. Look at that. Look at that. Do you see that?
Were you on Top Chef too? I was a judge on Top Chef at one point. I didn't get near the kitchen.
And then you've got some nice chopped onion. Put that in there. Okay?
Good. Good.
And, all right. Mayonnaise.
All right.
You mix the mayonnaise in.
Which kind of mayonnaise do you use? What kind of mayonnaise are you using? Because I got grief because I didn't use Duke's, which is from Virginia, but I originally was going to use Miracle Whip, but I thought that was too gross.
No, Miracle Whip is actually really quite tasty.
I love
Hellman's is
Miracle.
also. I couldn't find Hellman's. It's tough to find stuff. Okay.
It's
Mayonnaise.
pandemic. What
Do
kind
mayonnaise.
of
Okay.
mayonnaise is that?
It's Whole Foods.
Okay. All right. Fine. You know.
All right. Mayonnaise, I like to do just a teaspoon of Dijon mustard.
Oh, you are definitely Northern California.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it's just mustard. It's
That
mustard.
is Northern
You can have mustard powder,
California.
you can have dry mustard.
It's not Grey Poupon, I hope.
It's Dijon mustard. Okay, here.
Grey
Then
Poupon,
look and
yes,
see.
I'm
there
sure.
you are.
You
So
fancy
now-
Northern California people.
Okay,
All right.
so now I'm mixing it up.
All right.
Right.
Ooh.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to get fancy,
Yep, I do.
you could really jazz it up with like a little parsley.
It
Okay.
was Grey Poupon. Oh my gosh.
Parsley.
Yes, ma'am.
Parsley. Chop up a little parsley and throw it in there. Okay.
I've already eaten my sandwich with this much time you're taking, but you know, it's okay.
But look at this, is actually pretty quick. Okay, there.
Okay.
Some
Yeah,
parsley,
good.
right?
Right.
Pepper. Throw in some salt, just a little bit, because it's already got a nice amount of salt in it. Then I like to do a squeeze of lemon.
Ooh,
Squeeze
lemon
the
as
lemon.
well? Holy sugar.
Just a squeeze. Look at that.
Just,
Right?
is this in
Now-
Bon Appetit? Is this like, you know,
it's
where did you
just-
get this recipe?
It's a good tuna salad sandwich, man. It's just.
Where did you get this recipe? This is
right,
like Bon
here.
Appetit complex. Okay, what do you do next?
Okay. So either you can toast the bread. That's a toaster.
You lose that microwave softness if you
That
do it.
soggy bread thing,
Yeah.
you kind of minimize that. So you could do that and then some mayonnaise and lettuce, right?
More mayonnaise, good.
And sandwich. Or if you want to do the tuna melt, right? Put the
That was
tuna
what we
on.
were making, a tuna melt, right?
I
Not
know.
tuna sandwich,
So
a
here's
tuna
the
melt.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
Put the tuna on the bread. Put the cheese slice on the other side.
What kind of cheese? Are you a two-slice man? I was a
Cheddar.
two-slice man.
Better, and I sliced it.
Oh.
But you can also the packaged kind. That's
It
fine.
needs to be
That's-
prepackaged. I like
I'm
the
not mad at
prepackaged
you.
stuff.
I
So,
get it. I get it.
all right.
And then this is called a skillet.
Well, Kamala, you know, it wasn't the way I was raised, but I can see that kind of
Mark,
incredible.
you have two kitchens. You just
It's
told me that.
esprit
I'm not listening
esprit de
to you.
corps. But I just want to tell you, you've helped me. You've helped me a lot. You've helped educate me. Whether you're in California or Virginia, you know, for the people reviewing this, they can now realize your United States senators can not only pass legislation, but feed the
Right.
masses
And feed ourselves in the process.
and eat ourselves. Well, you and
Okay.
Doug stay safe. And thank you for that tutorial.
It's good to see you.
It's
Take
great
care,
to see
Mark.
you. Take care.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See, you can whip up this favorite in virtually no time.
You mentioned that we need barriers across the border to deal with drug trafficking. Are you advocating a wall?
Well, I think I'm advocating a system, a barrier system. In some places, and I'd have to find out more about the situation since I last visited the border.
From what you know, or do you believe that a wall would address the concern that you have about drug trafficking?
Well, the wall certainly would, but in some places it may not be necessary to have, you know, what most people imagine as a wall.
Are you aware that most of the drugs coming into the United States, in particular through Mexico, are entering through ports of entry?
Yes, but they also come elsewhere, and so do illegal immigrants cross the border. And
But in
basically,
particular on the subject of drug trafficking, are you aware that most of the drugs that are trafficked into the United States enter through points of entry?
yes,
Have you recently or ever visited a point of entry, a port of entry?
not
to the United States?
not recently.
When
I
was
used
the
to
last
spend
time?
a lot of time. Well, when I was Attorney General,
So a couple decades ago.
almost 30 years.
Okay, I'd urge you to visit again if and when you are confirmed. I think you'll see that a lot has changed over the years.
I seek to amend this legislation not because I take it or I take lynching lightly, but because I take it seriously. And this legislation does not.
The idea that we would not be taking the issue of lynching seriously is an insult to Senator Booker, to Senator Tim Scott, and myself, and all of the senators, past and present, who have understood this is part of the great stain of America's history. And on this day, the day of George Floyd's funeral, on this day, a day that should be a day of national mourning. Mr. President, in 2018, the Senate unanimously passed bipartisan anti-lynching legislation, which I proudly introduced with the only other black members of this body, Senator Cory Booker and Senator Tim Scott. It was a historic moment. It marked the first time in the history of our country that federal anti-lynching legislation had been passed by the United States Senate. It passed again by unanimous consent in 2019. Senator Paul is now trying to weaken a bill that was already passed. There's no reason for this. There's no reason for this. Senator Paul's amendment would place a greater burden on victims of lynching than is currently required under federal hate crimes laws. There is no reason for this. There is no reason other than cruel and deliberate obstruction on a day of mourning. On this very day, at this very hour, there is a memorial service to honor the life of George Floyd, who was murdered on a sidewalk by a police officer with a knee on his neck. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, George Floyd pleaded for his life, called for his late mother, and said he could not breathe. The pain experienced not only by that man, that human being, and his family and his children, but the pain of the people of America witnessing what we have witnessed since the founding of this country, which is that the black lives have not been taken seriously as being fully human and deserving of dignity. And it should not require a maiming or torture in order for us to recognize a lynching when we see it, and recognize it by federal law and call it what it is, which is that it is a crime that should be punishable with accountability and consequence.
You must start the marriages immediately.
We're getting a directive from our director that we cannot do anything until we hear from the state. We haven't heard from the state.
Who do we need to call to make that happen?
They're going to have to call the state because they're going to have to issue something from the court. Can we have you guys step aside and let us handle the customers until you get...
Yes. I'll get something, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to call them?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hi, I've got the Attorney General on the phone right here. Is there someone who can speak with her? Are you the director? I am. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Real with the AFER. These are our plaintiffs.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
I have the Attorney General on the phone right here.
Okay.
Take a call from her.
Sure.
Okay, Felix, here we go. I'm hitting the phone.
Hi, this is Dean.
You must start the marriages immediately.
All right, I will take that as our notice and license them.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. Have a good day and enjoy it. It's going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. Okay.
That was the clerk of Los Angeles, and I just told them that they have to start marriages right away.
It's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent full-time,
That's
who has
ridiculous.
spent full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage in November is someone who has the ability to win. And by that, we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition and bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making, the leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush-Clinton-Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive. This is personal to me because I served in Iraq. I left my seat in the state legislature in Hawaii, volunteered to deploy to Iraq, where I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw the terribly high human cost of war. I take very seriously the responsibility that the president has to serve as commander-in-chief, to lead our armed forces, and to make sure always, no, I'm not going to put party interests first. I will put the interests of the American people above all else.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I want to briefly give Senator Harris a final second to respond.
I believe that what our nation needs right now is a nominee who can speak to all people. I spent my entire career standing mostly in a courtroom speaking 5 words, Kamala Harris for the people. And it was about all the people, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of where they live geographically, regardless of the party with which they're registered to vote or the language their grandmother speaks. We need someone on this debate stage in November who has the ability to unify the country and to win the election. And I believe, again, I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You position yourself as aligned with the progressive movement to make criminal justice less punitive and racist, yet your record as a prosecutor shows that you embrace the tough on crime mentality. You've defended California's death penalty, and as California's Attorney General, your office opposed the release of nonviolent prisoners and violated the constitutional rights of various drug defendants. How do you reconcile your contradictory past with what you claim to support today?
I've been consistent my whole career. My career has been based on an understanding, one, that as a prosecutor, my duty was to seek and make sure that the most vulnerable and voiceless among us are protected. And I have also worked my entire career to reform the criminal justice system. As Attorney General, for example, I led the largest state Department of Justice in any state, in California, and implemented the first of its kind in the nation implicit bias and procedural justice training for police officers. It is why I created the first in the nation for any Department of Justice an open data initiative for the first time, making transparent and showing the public statistics around deaths in custody, arrest rates by race. I instituted a policy around requiring the agents who worked in my division, which is the first of its kind for a state agency, to wear body cameras. I created an initiative back when I was DA, and I created one of the first in the nation initiatives that was focused on re-entering former offenders by getting them jobs and training and counseling. On the issue of the death penalty, I am personally opposed to the death penalty. I've always been opposed to the death penalty. And that's not going to change. It is a flawed system. It is applied unequally based on race and based on income. It is something that we know is flawed in that it is a final judgment, but we have seen many cases where DNA has proven that the person who was sentenced to death was not in fact guilty. And it is something that frankly costs the taxpayers of this country a lot of money and is actually would be cheaper to let people spend their life and end their life in jail as opposed to that punishment of the death penalty. So on all of those issues, I will tell you that I am proud of my record, but I also do know there is a whole lot more work to be done in this country around criminal justice and reform of the system. We have a problem in this country of mass incarceration. We have a problem in this country of not having adequate response and consequence when young people who are unarmed are shot. We have a real problem in this country about disproportionate application of the law based on who is charged with a crime, what kind of bail is set for them, what kind of sentencing they receive, based on race. It is a flawed system, deeply flawed. And we have got to reform it, and everyone has to be on board. And we can't accept false choices, because I think we all realize it's a deeply flawed system, but we also want to make sure that when a woman is raped, a child is molested, one human being is killed by another human being, we also want to make sure there's going to be consequence, and serious consequence for those crimes. So I appreciate your question.
Good public speaker. Like,
Okay,
I can tell you.
Okay.
So when you're standing up to speak, remember that it's not about you.
Okay.
Okay, think of it like, have you learned about the Titanic?
Yeah. But I've never actually watched it. I really want to watch it.
No, listen. Let me tell you where this is going. So if you were on the Titanic, right, and you're on the Titanic, and you know the ship is about to sink. Yeah. And you're the only one who knows. Are you going to worry about how you look and how you sound?
No.
No, because the thing that's most important is that everyone knows what you know, because they need to know what you know. You see what I'm saying? So when you give your speech, you know something that you have to share with people that they need to know.
I don't want to suffer the consequences of our future president not liking my Indian food.
Can I just tell you something?
Yeah.
I've never made dosas.
Oh, hi! I love that you're coming to the kitchen already. Like you live here.
Coming to the kitchen. That's
This is so nice. Are you stressed for making Indian food?
Oh my God, you do it at a taster's. Oh my, you have no idea. This is how my mother kept all of her stuff.
This is so funny. I told my dad I was like bringing over the stuff from the store. He's like, obviously I put them in Taster's Choice.
But
and brought
this
them
literally
over.
was how my mother kept all of this stuff.
That's
We
so
would have
funny.
to think, what is that?
Do they tell each
I
other?
don't know.
Hi guys, it's Mindy. I'm here in my kitchen, and today we are cooking, but we have a very special guest. Very special. Senator Kamala Harris.
Hi, guys.
Wait, so here's what I want to know.
Okay.
Is it respectful to call, like, I should be calling you Senator Harris, right?
No, you should not. That's not on my birth certificate.
Okay.
Kamala?
Kamala?
Yes, please.
Okay, because the Indian in me, I feel like my parents,
Just
my
don't
dad
call
will
me-
watch this.
Just don't call me auntie.
Okay, I won't call you auntie. They'll be like, how could you call her by her first name? She's worked so hard. I love Kamala Harris, and I have really been vocal about my support for her. I really believe in her. I think she's a really exciting candidate, and I like her stance on so many issues that are important to me. Okay, so what we're gonna cook today is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you are Indian.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, you know Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like the thing we're so excited about to have you running for president.
Yeah.
So we're both Indian,
Yes.
but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. You look like the entire one half of my family.
Okay, thank you.
You do.
I've been telling people
You
we're
do.
related already,
Yeah.
so this is perfect. It's basically true. And so were you raised eating South Indian food?
South Indian food. Lots of rice and yogurt, potato curry, dal, lots of dal, idli.
Yes, Italy. That's a deep cut. Okay, so what we're cooking today is two things. One of the South Indian staples is dosa, which is kind of like a sourdough crepe. And then we're gonna make a potato curry, which is the traditional accompaniment. So I printed out, so
Where did
we're
you
doing
get
it
this
the
recipe?
old-fashioned way, which is I printed out a recipe from the internet.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so when I told my dad that I was going to be cooking South Indian food for you, he
Yes.
was extremely excited. He said, "I shall get the spices," but he took them all the Indian spices, and he put them
In the Taster's Choice jars. And this is exactly what my mother would do. So when I walked in and saw this, literally, I didn't know it was actually a thing among our
I
people.
guess it's an Indian thing.
It apparently is a thing.
Okay, cool. So this is all the spices we're going to use, courtesy of my dad.
Okay.
And then doses take a really long time to make the batter. So what we have is this great company, this Indian company actually, makes ready to make. You can get it at the Indian store. So we're busy. It's dripping.
Okay.
It's
it's dripping. Okay. So South Indians, it's vegetarian. It's all vegetarian. So when we were growing up and we'd go to India, and my grandfather was a little mischievous. So my grandmother, of course, was like strictly no, nothing. If it had a mother, it was not getting eaten. And if my grandmother would go out of town, my grandfather would then, he'd get very mischievous and he'd say, okay, let's have French toast. Because of course that has eggs.
egg. So when I would go and visit my family, obviously no meat. Even the dog would eat rice and yogurt. Yeah, the dog would eat rice and yogurt. The dog would like the rice and yogurt. Very good Hindu vegetarians. But then I'd get older, cool cousins who would take me out on their motorcycles, and we would all split like a lamb burger.
Right.
Because fast food, but like no beef or anything, obviously. But we would have lamb burger, and then we couldn't tell any of our grandparents about it. That's a fine shop.
Right.
Okay, Senator Harris, I say this with respect. You're kind of a show-off. It's like, meanwhile, it's taken me 20 minutes to do this much of ginger. Okay, what can't she do? You got my vote. So your mom worked, and my mom worked, but my mom also...
Your mother was a doctor.
Well, it's just interesting thing about Indian women of a certain generation is you had to do both.
Yeah.
Right? Like my mom would wake up at 5 a.m. before she went to the hospital to see patients, and she would cook food for the whole week.
Oh yeah, Mommy did that too.
And so some food that was cooked, dinner food was cooked at 6 a.m. And then she would leave, and then so all of our food was cooked, and we of course didn't understand. We're like, we want to go to McDonald's. But there is this a 4-course Indian meal for us, even if she wasn't there to eat it with us. And it was that kind of a thing that was completely normal when you're the children of professional immigrants.
Listen, this is how it was, because we would often come home from school before our mother would come home from work. And then there was always fresh baked cookies.
No.
Or always.
Oh my gosh.
So all of that stuff, like everything was from scratch. And this is why maybe I've become hopefully not a snob about food.
Someone who can cut up onions like that. Like we're on a cooking show.
But I take it very seriously.
Yeah. Listen, this is controversial. I put peas and cashews in mine. Yay or nay?
I noticed that. That was, I mean,
okay,
it's fine.
all right. Your silence was very damning. Yeah. I knew what you wanted to do.
No, but you know what? I want to try it. Go for it.
No, because I don't want to suffer the consequences of our future president not liking my Indian food. So why don't I just play it safe?
Okay, put a couple in. Just put a couple in. Can I just tell you something?
Yeah.
I've never made dosas.
Okay, but you're really good about critiquing them. Great. This is going to be great for me. All right, so let's get to the cooking part of it. I always use too much oil. I'm often surprised when I make things from scratch.
Right.
This is why I needed a U.S. Senator to witness me do it.
You are doing such a good job. How old were your parents when they came over?
My parents were, I think, almost maybe late 20s, like 28, 29, 30.
Yeah. See, my mother came when she was 19.
Wow.
By herself.
No way. Wow.
My grandfather was very progressive, and she wanted to study science.
My mother's father was the same way.
And this is the thing that's really interesting, because people have these stereotypes and actually misconceptions about who Indians are. I mean, at least I can speak about my own experience, and you have a similar experience, sounds like, where, my grandfather was very progressive. Like, his daughter wanted to go and do that, and he was like, go ahead.
I think this is done.
I think so, too.
And I think that we can move on to dosa.
Okay.
Here's my pre-made dosa mix that thousands of Indian women around the world are gasping that I'm using. I'm just going to put some oil in the pan.
Okay.
Now, would your family, would they do the thing where they took the paper towel and spread it around, or did they just leave it like this?
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that I'm really stressed about doing this since you're...
Okay, can I just tell you, I'm in awe that this is happening at all in a real kitchen in front of me. Look at how gorgeous that is. You're doing such a great job.
So I think the key to dosa is very simple, which is a lot of oil. So what I do is put a little bit of oil in the holes to make it like crispy.
Oh, that's smart.
My dad kind of always did this. Hi!
This is your father?
This is my dad, Avu.
Hi, Uncle.
Dad, this is Senator Harris.
It's an honor to meet you.
How are you? It's so good to meet you.
Thank you for coming.
My grandparents lived in Bessenecker.
Yeah,
They were in
my family lives there.
Yes, I would go and take walks on the morning on the beach with my grandfather.
Yeah.
Dad, do you know that her family keeps spices in Taster's Choice
We
bottles?
would keep the same in Taster's Choice bottles. Why is it that you guys keep these things in Taster's Choice? I never asked, but my mother drank Taster's Choice coffee every morning, so I guess, and we recycle everything, of course.
Wait, Senator Harris, what do you think of this dose? I think it's done.
That's really good.
I think it's going to be pretty good. There we go.
Wow, I am really impressed.
Okay, so now the components are all ready. And we're just going to take the potato and put it into the doses.
Yum.
And now we'll fold them over. That was the better way to do it. Yes, wait.
Look at how gorgeous that is.
I'm going to do the same thing on mine. So, masala dosa. Thank you for eating this. I would give this a hard B-. The doses weren't, I didn't think they were.
But the flavor is very nice.
Thank you. I was nervous cooking in front of you.
But you shouldn't be. You're such a good cook.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good.
Maybe when you're in the White House, I can come and cook you a meal. Thank you so much for cooking in my home with me.
I'm so glad to be with you.
I'm so honored and excited to vote for you.
God, you're the best.
As a future educator, I'm really bothered that public schools are being targets for mass shootings. 2 days ago was the 20th anniversary of the Columbine massacre, but still 2 decades later, no major gun control legislation has been passed. So my question is, as president, how will you go about keeping our schools safe and keeping guns out of the hands of those who should not have them?
Thank you, Ben. And I'm sure that there are plenty of students here who, while you were in high school, even middle school, that you had to participate in a drill, right? Where you were convened and your teachers taught you about how you need to go and run in a closet because there may be a mass shooter roaming the hallways of your school. And in our America, that should never have to happen. Conversations take place every night. Conversations take place every night between students and their parents. Why do these things have to happen? Why do we have to have a drill like that? To which, of course, the response is because there are people in Washington, D.C., supposed leaders, who have failed to have the courage to reject a false choice, which suggests you're either in favor of the Second Amendment or you want to take everyone's guns away. Supposed leaders in Washington, D.C., who have failed to have the courage to recognize, you know what, you want to go hunting, that's fine. But we need reasonable gun safety laws in this country, starting with universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapon ban. But they have failed to have the courage to act. So, Ben, here's my response to you. Upon being elected, I will give the United States Congress 100 days to get their act together and have the courage to pass reasonable gun safety laws. And if they fail to do it, then I will take executive action. And specifically what I will do is put in place a requirement that for anyone who sells more than 5 guns a year, they are required to do background checks when they sell those guns. I will require that for any gun dealer that breaks the law, the ATF take their license. And by the way, ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Well, the ATF has been doing a lot of the A and the T, but not much of the F. And we need to fix that. And then on the third piece, because none of us have been sleeping over the last 2 years, part of what has happened under the current administration is they took fugitives off the list of prohibited people. I put them back on the list, meaning that fugitives from justice should not be able to purchase a handgun or any kind of weapon. So that's what I do. To fight for an America where no mother or father has to teach their young son that people may stop him, arrest him, chase him, or kill him because of his race. An America
where every parent can send their children to school without being haunted by the horror of yet another killing spree, where we treat attacks on voting rights and civil rights and women's rights and immigrant rights as attacks on our country itself. An America where we welcome refugees and bring people out of the shadows and provide a pathway to citizenship. An America where our daughters and our sisters and our mothers and our grandmothers are respected where they live and where they work.
What specifically would you do with the thousands of people who try to reach the United States every day and want a better life through asylum?
Immediately on January 20th of 2021, I will, first of all, we cannot forget our DACA recipients, and so I'm going to start there. I will immediately, by executive action, reinstate DACA status and DACA protection to those young people. I will further extend protection for deferral of deportation for their parents and for veterans, who we have so many who are undocumented and have served our country and fought for our democracy. I will also immediately put in place a meaningful process for reviewing the cases for asylum. I will release children from cages. I will get rid of the private detention centers. And I will ensure that this microphone that the President of the United States holds in her hand is used in a way that is about reflecting the values of our country and not about locking children up, separating them from their parents. And I have to just say that we have to think about this issue in terms of real people. A mother who pays a coyote to transport her child through their country of origin, through the entire country of Mexico, facing unknown peril to come here. Why would that mother do that? I will tell you. Because she has decided for that child to remain where they are is worse. But what does Donald Trump do? He says, go back to where you came from. That is not reflective of our America and our values, and it's got to end.
The president's tweets and his behaviors about this are just further evidence of the fact that he uses his power in a way that is designed to beat people down instead of lift people up. Frankly, when you look at what he's been tweeting today, directed at the whistleblower, directed at so many people, I frankly think that based on this and all we've seen him do before, including attacking members of Congress, that he frankly should be, his Twitter account should be suspended. I think there is plenty of now evidence to suggest that he is irresponsible with his words in a way that could result in harm to other people. And so the privilege of using those words in that way should probably be taken from him. The last time our country endured a civil war was over America's original sin, slavery. And if Donald Trump thinks that this is a moment where he's actually being held accountable for his failures as president and his failure to uphold the oath to protect the Constitution of the United States and our democracy, if he's equating that with a war that took place between American people over slavery, I mean, it is yet again evidence of the fact that he is delusional in that he has a very outsized sense of himself as compared to the history of our country and all that we have been through and all that we are capable of. Where is the accountability and consequence when a system fails the people it is designed to protect? On Monday, June 9th, in response to protests in all 50 states of these United States, Senator Cory Booker and I, along with our CBC and House Judiciary colleagues, and a majority of our Senate caucus announced the Justice and Policing Act. Over 1 week later, somebody got the memo, and then what they do? They came up with what they call the Justice Act as a way to essentially show that they've got something, but to basically obstruct what already had been put in place. The Republican proposal was carefully crafted to deflect from real change by merely offering to study the problem without doing anything to solve it.
Madam President.
That's empty. The Republican bill does not even provide a baseline for a discussion or amendment on police reform, in that there are no mechanisms to hold law enforcement officers accountable in court for their misconduct. There is no transparency into police misconduct. There is no requirement of data collection on all use of force incidents or on racial or religious profiling. There is no ban on harmful policing policies. No-knock warrants in drug cases. We're not banning all no-knock warrants. No-knock warrants in drug cases, because Breonna Taylor would be alive today had that been the case. Chokeholds, carotid holes. No reform of those issues in the Republican bill that's being offered. And there is no standard, national standard for use of force.
Is the senator certainly is familiar with the rules of the Senate, which allow senators to offer amendments to improve legislation once we get on it. But if the Democratic conference is going to prevent the Senate from actually getting on the bill, there's no opportunity for anyone, any senator, you or any one of us, to offer amendments to improve it.
The two Senate authors of this bill serve with you on the Senate Judiciary Committee. As you know, because we've been present together during our most recent hearings, we have asked that there would be a meaningful discussion of the Justice and Policing Act in that committee. None has occurred. So if we're going to talk about process, let us look at all the tools that are available to well-intentioned, well-meaning legislators if the goal is actually to solve and address the issue at hand. I've seen no evidence of that. I've seen no evidence of, in fact, what I've seen reading some of the newspapers, sometimes they get things wrong, but if they got it right, the Senate leader said that he has no interest in engaging in that kind of discussion or debate before putting the bill on the floor for a vote tomorrow.
What I'm trying to fathom, Madam President, is why the senator would rather have these negotiations occur behind closed doors as opposed to here on the floor of the Senate for the American people to see broadcast on television. Don't you think that sort of interaction and debate and negotiation out in front of all 330 million Americans would be beneficial to healing our country and coming to some consensus about what the appropriate reforms should be?
Indeed, that is the beauty of the Judiciary Committee. Our meetings are public meetings. And so we can't answer the people's demand for accountability with watered-down politics and watered-down policies and an obstructionist tactic to distract us from what we clearly know is necessary to meet the calls and the cries of this moment and this movement. We are responding to the cries in the street. We are taking them seriously. And we have proposed a prescription that actually responds to not just their demands, but the specific cases and the bodies that have just most recently been buried, much less the generations of black bodies that have been buried because of this issue. So don't anyone dare suggest we are standing in the way of progress. Let us all be clear about what is happening in the politics of this moment. The Republican bill has been thrown out to give lip service to an issue with nothing substantial in it that would actually save or would have saved any of those lives.
this primary about new government benefits, such as student loan cancellation, free college, health care, and more. Do you think that Democrats have a responsibility to explain how they will pay for every proposal they make along those lines?
Well, let me tell you something. I hear that question, but where was that question when the Republicans and Donald Trump passed a tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations in this country, contributing at least $1 trillion to the debt of America, which middle-class families will pay for one way or another? Working families need support and need to be lifted up, and frankly, this economy is not working for working people. For too long, the rules have been written in the favor of the people who have the most and not in favor of the people who work the most, which is why I am proposing that we change the tax code so for every family that is making less than $100,000 a year, they will receive a tax credit that they can collect up to $500 a month, which will make all the difference between those families being able to get through the end of the month with dignity and with support or not. And on day one, I will repeal that tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations of America.
Senator Harris, thank you.
I strongly believe that a society will be judged and should be judged based on how it treats its children. One of the best expressions of love a society can make for its children is to invest in their education. And if we are going to invest in the education of our children, necessarily we must invest in our teachers. Teachers actually spend more hours of awake time with our children than parents do. Our teachers are people who have decided to do some of the most noble work any professional can take on, which is nurturing and helping to develop and stimulate the minds and the vision of our children. Many people who have achieved success, whether they're in front of a spotlight or a camera or not, will agree that their success was a function of many things, but chief among them was teachers who took an interest in them and invested a belief in children that they could do and be anything. It is simply about saying that teachers should be recognized for their value to society and they should be paid for that value. And instead, right now we have a situation where teachers are making over 10% less than similarly situated professionals with college degrees. The pay gap for teachers as compared to other similar professionals is $13,500 a year. We've got teachers around our country who are working 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I spoke with a teacher in South Carolina who was talking about how, as her second job, she was bussing tables. She looked up one day and realized there were 4 other teachers bussing tables in that same restaurant, because none of them could survive off of the teacher pay alone. In America today, we have in our colleges and universities straight A science students who would love to go and share their passion for science with elementary, middle, or high school students and teach. But they're looking at their student loans, they're looking at how much teachers are paid, and they know they can't make ends meet. So instead of pursuing their passion of teaching a child, that science student goes on and works at a pharmaceutical company. That's a shame. Let's understand that the work of being a teacher is as important, if not frankly, much more important than so many of these other things in terms of what it will give society as a return on that investment. Let's invest in our teachers.
That is not our America. When we have children in cages crying for their mothers and fathers, don't you dare call that border security. That's a human rights abuse. And that's not our America. When we have leaders who bully and attack a free press and undermine our democratic institutions, that's not our America. When white supremacists march and murder in Charlottesville, or massacre innocent worshipers in a Pittsburgh synagogue. That's not our America. When we have leaders who attack public schools and vilify public school teachers, that is not our America. When bankers who crashed our economy get bonuses, but the workers who brought our country back can't even get a raise, that's not our America. And when American families are barely living paycheck to paycheck, what is this administration's response? Their response is to try and take health care away from millions of families. Their response is to give away $1 trillion to the biggest corporations in this country. And their response is to blame immigrants as the source of all our problems. And guys, let's understand what's happening here. People in power are trying to convince us that the villain in our American story is each other. But that is not our story. That is not who we are. That is not our America. Let's remember, when women fought for suffrage, those in power said they were dividing the sexes and disturbing the peace. Let's remember, when abolitionists spoke out and civil rights workers marched, their oppressors said they were dividing the races and violating the word of God. But Frederick Douglass said it best, and Harriet Tubman and Dr. King knew. To love the religion of Jesus is to hate the religion of the slave master. When we have true unity, no one will be subjugated for others. It's about fighting for a country with equal treatment, collective purpose, and freedom for all. That's who we are. That's who we are. Their felony convictions should not be the barrier to them having employment in an industry that they were a part of before it was an industry. Thank you for that. Right? They were ahead of the curve. Invariably, a lot of the people who historically were arrested for marijuana sales were young men of color. And so isn't that the irony of it all? That now this is one of the fastest growing money-making industries in our country. And the very young men who were trying to make money doing the same thing, but got criminalized and have now been branded felons for life, are excluded from the economic opportunities that are now available because of this new industry. So part of what has to happen is there have to be policies in place that look at the background and actually do the work of saying that some of those young men should be first in line to get the jobs that are available. And that their felony convictions should not be the barrier to them having employment in an industry that they were a part of before it was an industry. Thank you for that. Right? They were ahead of the curve. We have to have the courage to recognize that there are a lot of folks who have been incarcerated who should not have been incarcerated and are still in prison, in large part because, to your point, Joy, they were convicted under draconian laws. They were convicted under draconian laws that have incarcerated them for, in some cases, a lifetime based on what is essentially a public health issue.
Thank you.